TV party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't wanna talk about anything else!
We don't wanna know.
We're dedicated, yes,
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuit!
Everybody loves Hippo Toes.
Scary dog!
Dancing at Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is The Umbrella Academy, brought to you by Borderline Entertainment, Dark Horse Entertainment, Universal Cable Productions, Netflix, and NBC Universal Television Distribution. I am joined tonight first by my brother from another mother and my hetero life mate, Mr. Jesse, the Essential Jesse Starcher. How do you do, sir?
Yes, I am essential. Not to the listeners, but trust me, I'm at least here, and hopefully you'll get to enjoy my dulcet tones. So I'm excited to talk about what we're talking about on TV Party tonight. So let's, whenever we're ready. I know we got another person to bring on, though.
Yeah, she can wait for a minute. Listen, Jesse, I need to talk to you.
Okay, sir.
Does it feel weird that this is not our usual Wednesday night jam?
Yeah, it does. It definitely has been strange not listening to a new artist or somebody screaming in my ear for at least half the day prior to getting on the podcast in the evenings.
You could have listened to the new Bongzilla that came out yesterday.
Oh, really? It did? Okay.
Yeah,
I listened to the old one.
420, dude.
Oh, well, of course. Why did I think different? I listened to the old one and got a contact high, and nobody was smoking around me.
Yeah, I listened to it at work and immediately was drug tested.
Suspicious behavior, sir.
Yep.
What's that smell?
Ooh, that smell. The smell of gas around you. So yeah, man, we'll get to Bongzilla, though, a little bit later in the year. It just didn't work out with the timing. So we are going to talk Umbrella Academy tonight. And here also to do that with us is the owner and CEO of Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the great jewelry maker, the animation expert, Alexis Hejna. How do you do, madam?
Hey, at least tonight you remembered what show you were doing.
Don't point out my foibles.
You told me I could wait. You opened the door. Here we go.
The real test comes when ad time hits, all right? When we hit the ads, we'll see if he actually remembers what show he's on.
How high did Alexis and High sound on the Jiu-Jitsu podcast doing those ads, by the way?
It was, yeah, fantastic. You guys needed something to bring yourselves up from the depths of what that podcast brought you down to, which, you know, from what I understand, alcohol was involved, possibly drugs. The dog was voicing their displeasure at the end.
We wanted alcohol and drugs to be involved. We had to settle for Queens of the Stone Age.
I do recall that. Yes, that happened.
Yep, Jesse's very familiar with that behavior where I get bored during a podcast and just start playing random music.
Yes, indeed.
So real quick, Jesse, I asked you to do this with me at the time. I didn't really have anyone in mind to do this. I didn't know if there was anybody involved in the podcast family that's like super into the Umbrella Academy other than Evan Bevins, and he wasn't available 2 nights in a row. And I didn't want to do a comic strip for this again. I kind of did that once to accommodate him. Plus, a lot of the first graphic novel, Apocalypse Suite, is what was adapted into season 1. But this second time around, I was like, hey, let me grab you for it. You were though already interested in the Umbrella Academy, correct?
Yeah, I watched the first season. I hadn't read the comics, but I knew they existed. I was excited when the first season dropped, and then after watching it, I honestly said to myself, I think that, and I still think after watching it the second season today, that this is my favorite team superhero show, TV show that I've seen. And there's a few out there.
Hang on, now I have Alexis can wait. Listen, you and I need to talk.
Okay, sir.
Hey,
should I just put myself on mute and go get a drink?
I mean, your alcohol problems are your own. I can't tell you what to do. But,
Coke.
okay. Just
I'm
don't
not drinking tonight.
Just don't sniff it on the podcast is all I'm saying. I mean, mute, take a little snort, unmute.
One rip and you're good. Come on back. Unmute.
Yeah, I do it before the podcast. Listen, you think this is better than Doom Patrol?
Ooh, I honestly, Doom Patrol's up there, man, but I really do like this one.
You're out of your fucking mind.
Well, first off, okay, it may not come... I really love the family dynamic of this show. And you could make arguments about Doom Patrol as well. Mark, what does Doom Patrol... And it's been a while since I watched both seasons, but Doom Patrol, I don't recall having too much time travel. Did they have it in
my
there?
God. You one-trick pony. You one-track mind-having man.
Well,
here's a pile of shit, but the pile of shit travels through time. Give it an Emmy. Holy cow!
Yes.
I'm Jesse Starcher.
There's a list. There's boxes to be checked. You take a look which one has more boxes checked, and there you go, Mark Radulich.
Television and film critic Jesse Starcher. You can check him out at Stiznarky on Twitter.
Yeah.
Time travel, loved it, 100%. Rotten Tomatoes.
Rotten Tomatoes.
No time
Yes,
travel,
sir.
hated it. What about you, Alexis?
This shit?
What about you, Alexis? What drew you to this particular show? Because you had actually, once I had it established who I had a guest on, I didn't ask anyone else, but you wanted to come on, you wanted to talk about it, so clearly there's some passion there. What drew you to the show?
Oh, I'm sorry. You don't want me to wait anymore? Because I'm sure there's a Pokemon raid I could go participate in if you two want to keep talking.
He'll shove me to the corner now. It's all you.
You gonna talk? It's
Yeah.
a podcast. All right, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no. Huge fan of the first two seasons. I think they are insanely well done shows. What actually got me interested was that I believe we had mistakenly written this down on the calendar as Umbrella Academy Season 3. And I was like, oh, I didn't know Season 3 was coming out already. I'll sign up. And then you corrected me and said, oh, no, we're talking about Season 2. I'm like, the Season 2 that ended a while ago? I'm not going to back out. I'll talk about that.
Yeah, the problem was, I think when the first season came out, I don't think I had intended to talk about it. I don't think I knew what it was, and there was other stuff going on with me at the time.
Yeah.
I want to say it came out February of 2019. And it just never made the calendar. And then when I finally realized, oh, this is a Dark Horse comic adaptation.
I think we had it on the calendar at one point, but then it got removed. For something else.
It was one of those that just fell through the cracks. And we finally got it done. But I remember watching it I remember watching the first season in the middle of like my cancer treatments. Whenever this was that we did do it, and I remember like I had like really bad chemo brain at the time, and so like that first episode where it's like, it's like loud classical music and you see Space Boy up in space and all of that, and it's just like I couldn't handle it at the time, and I think I turned it off. And then I tried watching it the next day, still in the midst of chemo brain, just not as bad as it was the day before. And I had to keep getting up and walking around the house. And I remember talking to you about that. I was talking to Evan Bevins about how the first season, and that might have been the chemo talking, but I had real problems with the first season. I was bored to tears through most of it.
Oh, wow.
Now, a lot of the
I would have loved your reaction watching the I Think We're Alone Now dance sequence while you had chemo brain.
That might have been one of the times I got up and went for a walk and just came back with the television still on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember distinctly telling Evan Bevins that like there was a lot of the stuff with Vanya and the psycho boyfriend, I was fast forwarding through. That and Space Boy and the Rumor, a lot of like their conversations, I was like, nope. Like, it's so funny. Like you talk about like watching stuff on fast forward. I was like skipping a lot of stuff. Yeah. But I have to say, season 2 much better. And hey, I'm more or less healthy, so
yes, sir.
I could actually enjoy this season. It came out July 31st, 2020. We're just getting to it now. Season 3 is supposed to come out later this year, early 2022. So, hopefully we'll get to it a little closer to when it actually comes out. But that's okay. Season 2 is really, 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 really good. At the end of Season 1, they, to escape the apocalypse that Vanya caused, they time traveled with number 5 back to the early 60s and land in Dallas, but they all land in different years, right around the time of the Kennedy assassination. There's an event that happens that causes World War III, and on the day that number 5 lands is the day that there's mutually assured destruction through nuclear holocaust. And he is then saved by, was it Cha-Cha who saves him?
No, Hazel. Cha-Cha was the black woman.
Yeah, Mary J. Blige.
So we'll start there. Let me just, we were talking about these in sort of general, plot lines and whatnot. This beginning bit, Alexis, where they're all displaced through different parts of time, and a lot of the first couple episodes are spent catching up with where they are and how they got to they are, and getting the band back together. What did you think of these first few episodes?
Well, I'm just going to say the very first moment of the first season immediately pulls you in. In fact, I think Netflix actually released just those first few moments early as a premiere on YouTube. And that was brilliant because you show up, you see, they're not back where they were supposed to go. They're in the 60s. They're using with the exception of number 5, they're all using their powers to fight Soviet soldiers. You see Vanya floating in the air. You see the ghost Ben with the tentacles coming out of his body. You see Klaus charging with the ghost soldiers behind him. I just remember looking and going, I have no idea what's going on, but holy crap, I want to keep watching. I mean, it's real. It's like that few minutes, like, okay, you have my attention. Please continue.
That's actually one of my favorite scenes of the whole season, and only because this is a superhero show where not much superheroing gets done. They very rarely ever even use their powers, and one actively doesn't want to use them anymore. As in fact, the Rumor doesn't want to use her powers, and very rarely does. Seance doesn't want to use his powers, and very rarely does. Everyone's just sort of running away from their life as a superhero, so it was kind of cool to see like an Avengers moment right at the beginning where they're all using their powers.
Yeah, we get in here and we're dropped in like shortly after the Kennedy assassination, and just like you said, you see that crazy battle sequence. Shit's got turned on side of it, upside down one more time. Change the title of the show to Avoiding the Apocalypse Again, because that's what seems to happen every time. But yeah, our first 3 episodes, it's fun to kind of catch up or see where the team has landed, because just like you said, it's at different points throughout the 60s. Some have been there for a year or two. I can't remember what the longest one is. I know somebody's been there. I think Luther had been there for at least a year. And Hazel showing up and telling 5, hey, you got to go. And then, of course, Hazel, I think, was my favorite character from the first season. After watching everything that happened, and I knew we probably weren't going to get much of him because he kind of had a happy send-off. But then we see him for like a couple seconds, and then that's it. And he's gone. But that sets everything in motion. And, of course, we have, I think Hazel drops the Frankel footage, I think is what it's called, in his pocket. And that sets the adventure off, because we got to figure out what's going on with the Frankel footage. And we got introduced to the Swedes in the first episode. I think, is that what they're called, the Swedes?
That's what they're eventually called, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we get to see them. They're a trio of characters. Are they all brothers?
I don't think it's officially confirmed, but I know that they call each other brother at least once.
Okay.
So my assumption was if they weren't biological brothers, they had clearly been fighting together for long enough to call each other brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's a great start, man. I mean, these I don't know how much more you want to go into the episodes themselves, but just to give you a broad painting of what you're going to expect. Trying to get the band back together again. They kicked things off well, in my opinion, and set us down, of course, with our head spinning and where do we go and how do we figure out what needs to be done.
I really love the number 5 character. He's my favorite character on the show. And I like that, almost immediately he is told, like, hey, you guys are... One of the things that's like a reoccurring gag in the show is we did it again. Because you had another apocalypse. Like the way they say it, like, oh, like they broke a glass or something. Like, oh, we did it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love. He goes to Diego and he's like, "We got to stop the apocalypse." He's like, "That's not for another 60 years." He's like, "Not that one."
Number 5 is a great character because he is a 60-year-old man in the
Yes.
body of a 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm. He portrays that actor. I don't have the list in front of me, but that actor does a fantastic job of getting that across sometimes, where you could see like just the emotion in his face looks almost like what an older person would look like. And you're like, how is this kid pulling it off?
He is Aidan Gallagher, and he's done a couple of Nickelodeon things. He was on an episode of Modern Family, but like this is like his big thing that he's done outside of the Nickelodeon stuff.
And now fans are calling for him to be cast in Marvel and DC films. He has a huge, huge following. People love this kid.
I was
He's
watching
really good.
something. Yeah, I was watching something earlier today, and apparently he has a bit of a YouTube presence prior to becoming a real famous actor, where he was reviewing movies. So, that he's done. I'm glad that they found this kid and put him in this role because he does a great job. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, when he has to face his actual self as an older man, and they have to fight, and they have to go through all the stages of what was it called? The paradox syndrome or whatever it was. Again, these two guys. This kid has to go up to this. He has to act like an old man and fight fight himself as an old man, and he again just knocks it out of the park, in my opinion.
Yeah, his character is great, and the actor playing him is spot on. I like the fact that he's once again kind of leading the charge, because the way that the show is structured is that without some sort of anchor, without some sort of unifying force tying them together, these people would live disparate, very separate lives. Even when we meet them in the first season, they had all left the academy, they'd gone their separate ways, and they only came back to bury their father. But they, as much as they might love each other as siblings, and a few something more, they very much want their own lives and their own identities. And 5, despite himself, is always like, no, there's a bigger mission ahead here. Like without him, there's no show, and it's written specifically that way.
Yeah, and him being of all the people trying to bring everyone together, and at a couple points throughout the series, fails to do so. I remember at that point near the end where they're just like, we've got to get everybody together so we can go back to where we came from, and 2 people show up, and one of them was freaking Klaus, of all people, who shows up. So, this kid is trying, number 5, of course, obviously, he's wise beyond what he looks like, but he is the unifying force throughout the whole second season, where he is just going around trying to bring everyone together. And at some points he does, but he can't get everybody on the same page because a lot of his brothers and sisters have actually started having lives in the 60s.
Right.
Because they've been there so long.
I'll tell you,
there's a bit of displacement with how old he actually is to his siblings. He was gone for ages. They probably assumed he was dead. He comes back, and even though he is over 60 years old, he's still in the body of a child. They've all gone and lived their lives. I get the feeling a lot of times that when they look at him, they're like, we know you're actually older, but we just can't actually accept it. You get a lot of great bits between him and Luther, because Luther is supposed to be the leader of the team, and number 5, she's like, no way, you couldn't lead this team if you tried. And he's absolutely right. Luther has daddy issues out the wazoo, and I watched a recap of the episodes today to get a refresher on this, and they pointed something out I didn't catch. Luther is almost always eating when he's on screen.
It's true.
He's
yeah.
eating away he's eating his feelings. That's what
Yeah.
Luther does.
Did they mention anything about the characters being the representation? Now, this might be from season 1, but the representation of the stages of grief.
They did in the season. The reviewer who I watched said he talked about that in the first season and said, if you didn't see it, here's a link to this. And I might actually check that out after our show tonight.
Same here.
Very, very interesting theory.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you, in the first season, like I said, I've always loved number 5. I didn't mind Luther in the first season. I like him less this season, and I think it's because of they got to start moving these characters beyond the issues that started in the first season. Because, with a lot of shows, I feel like these things are developed for 20 episodes, but because they're on streaming services, they get cut in half a lot of times. And this absolutely, clearly they were setting up for a third season, but this felt like the back half of a full season order of shows, and that they had wrapped up the whole story. And I bring that up because, like I said, Luther didn't bother me as much in the first season because we were just establishing these problems. They continue these problems. These problems start to take root, and they start pushing him to make certain decisions, not always great decisions. And I found myself losing patience with Luther as the season goes on. The one who I actually softened on, who I hated in the first season because I can't watch for 10 episodes a guy just self-destruct, and wallow in his own crapulence, as Mr. Burns would say. But then, this season actually comes alive, and he's actually a fun character to watch, is the Seance. He's great.
Klaus.
Yeah.
Klaus gets my absolute favorite line when he gets Allison's husband out of jail and says, "You're my brother-in-law." Yeah, family barbecues are about to get a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I enjoyed Klaus a lot this season. Him being the cult leader. First of all, that actor, you talk about actors who just really nailed their parts. He's so fumpish, people are touching him. He's like, ugh, no, I don't know if either one of you have ever watched Schitt's Creek, and I'm not the world's biggest authority on it. My wife has made me watch a few episodes, but
David.
What's his face's son who's in the show? He's now a big actor.
Dan Levy.
Yeah.
Levy's son.
He has a lot of those mannerisms where I don't want anything dirty anywhere near me. They do this acting with their body and their face that everything has to be in a 10-foot bubble around them.
Oh, yeah, he's memeable.
He's so funny. Let's get the actor's name real quick. Robert Sheehan is so good in this. And like I said, I really hated him in the first season because I just thought he was wallowing too much. And they didn't, and he's kind of a whiner. And this one, when they're giving him stuff to do and he's kind of a fun character with the cult, I'm like, oh, this is actually really enjoyable. I don't want to fast forward through his scenes.
I love the fact that he basically built a cult and just quotes future song lyrics to all his followers.
That's what I do.
He names, same here. He names the cult Destiny's Children, which is hilarious.
Ben for all of his miracles, and oh my God, Ben is probably, I think, the character who got the least amount of development, but that's fine because he's dead. But his snarkiness around Klaus just always makes me laugh. They are the best odd couple on the planet.
Well, you got to think, Ben can't kill himself because he's already dead, but could you imagine being stuck with Klaus for what was it, 13 years or something since he's passed?
Mm-hmm.
He's got to be he probably was a decent kid initially and then just developed snark because he's had to put up with Klaus's stuff for that long.
Well, he talks about it on the show. He's like, do you know what it's like to be as powerless as I have been for so long as I have?
Yeah.
And it absolutely, look, he may be physically dead, but he's still mentally and spiritually alive. And imagine being in his situation where you have no control over your life, you have no control over what you're doing, and you're tied to somebody who's self-destructive and makes terrible, unethical decisions. daily.
And no, I'm sure that Ben's stepped up over hundreds of times trying to get Klaus back on the right track. And at some point he was just like, I can't do this anymore. There's no hope. And the good thing was, obviously, Klaus went in, what they said, like 3 years of sobriety or something like that. He hadn't touched a drink. Compared to season 1, season 2, Klaus is making these strides. So Ben has something to be proud of him. And then, of course, things take a really bad turn for Klaus in his personal life. And Ben is trying his best to keep him from going in and ruining everything that he's built, but he can't do it. And he just watches him do it, watches Klaus self-destruct one more time. That had to have been just horrible.
Yeah, but Ben actually does get, like I said, even though I think he has the least amount of development when you actually talk about character, I think he gets some of the best scenes in the whole series.
Yeah, he's used well.
Scene where he learns that he can possess Klaus, and Klaus lets him, so he can actually touch and be with another person for the first time in years. And his death scene with Vanya was so powerful and so well done.
It really was. I was actually going to say that if you hadn't, that like, it's as satisfying as saying like when the genie is freed from the lamp. It has that kind of resonance and moment to it where you're like, he's finally free of, he's free of Klaus, he's free of the mortal coil, he's free of all of it, and can finally ascend to heaven. And it's like, this is for all that character has been through over the course of 2 seasons. He finally got what he needed, which is to be free. Be free of being trapped on Earth in a ghost form, which I feel like is a fate worse than death. I'm going to keep bringing that up. Like, just this idea of like we think about like Patrick Swayze and like Ghost or whatever, like where you're still able to be on this earth and see things and see your family, but you can't touch them, you can't do anything, you can't live. And, like, is that really living?
Yeah. And there's a lot of guilt that Klaus brought with him after Ben had passed away. There's that little bit at the beginning of, I think, as the second to last episode, where they show shortly after Ben had passed that Klaus brought him back. And Ben looks at him and says, they told me there was a light. I needed to go to it. I better get going. And then Klaus kind of talks him out of it. I think Klaus carries this guilt around with him. He's obviously not going to show that sometimes until that moment he gets in the car with Vanya and he says, did Ben say anything? This is after Ben had actually disappeared. Goes, did Ben say anything? And that's when she says, you don't have to worry about keeping him around. He wanted to stay around. And you could just tell the relief on Klaus's face that he didn't have to carry that anymore, that he wanted Ben just to be there with him, but he felt guilty because of it. So that's a very interesting dynamic, those two. Do you guys remember the scene where he's fighting with him? I think it's like in the first or second episode, like they're fighting each other on the road, and these people pass by, and they see Klaus just sitting there punching the air. One of the top funny moments of this second season, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I want to stick with Klaus for a second. We're talking about storylines, and just so we can talk about it and then set it aside. One of the things they give Klaus to do, the overarching thing is stopping whatever the event is that causes World War III. Diego is obsessed with wanting to stop the Kennedy assassination, but I don't know how well of a good job they did of getting number 5 to get it through his head that, no, the Kennedy assassination has to happen. That's a part of history. If we remove it, we might set off other events that cause World War III. But there's something else that's happening here around that same time that causes this to happen, and he just doesn't know what it is. But a lot of it revolves around that particular event. In any case, the whole series deals with unraveling that mystery and getting to a resolution. But along the way, they have to give the characters other things to do over the course of 10 episodes. And one of the things they give Klaus to do is he decides he's going to use this as an opportunity to talk to, and I can't remember the character's name, but his love interest from Vietnam, Dave. he's going to find Dave, and he's going to try to convince him to not enlist in the military so that he won't die in Vietnam. And you can definitely see where there's somewhat of an agenda here in the writing, which is fine. I mean, you're allowed to have agendas, and people are allowed to agree or disagree with them. But there was clearly embedded in the writing a distinct opinion about the Vietnam War, and.
Well, let's face it. This second season was pretty much the agendas of America in the mid-20th century and how we all dealt with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll talk about Rumor and her thing in a second, and all the racism in there, but which again is fine. Just going back to him and David, what did you guys think of how they handled that episode or two where? He goes to David. They have the interaction in the diner. He gets punched, and then Dave kind of finds him later. And Klaus is trying to tell him, like, if you go to Vietnam, you're going to die. Here, I have your dog tag. See, I'm telling the truth. And Dave's like, well, this all seems like nonsense. And he goes to Vietnam anyway. Go to you first, Jesse. What'd you think?
Well, if I was in Klaus's shoes, I'd be doing the same thing. Being a fan of this plot device, you think of how you'd write something like that, how you would act. If you lost somebody that you loved and you could go back and tell them, don't do this, don't do it, don't do this one thing, and then have a chain reaction and save their life. That's exactly what people would do. So that's one of my favorite parts about this season is that a lot of times, and there's a little bit of beating around the bush, but a lot of times they lay it out on the table. And Klaus laid it out there on the table finally with Dave and said, look, this is what's going to happen. And then what he ends up finding out is that encounter that he had with Dave and his uncle at that diner, to which, man, you talk about another powerful scene where his uncle is yelling at him to get up and punch the queer. And we know that Dave, I'm sure at that time, is struggling with himself, but he feels he has to get up and he has to punch Klaus in the face in order to prove to his uncle that he's worthy of being a man, or for some stupid reason. And the horrified look on Klaus's face after he gets punched in the nose, and then trying to tell him that you're going to die if you enlist in the military. You are going to die on a hill for nothing. And it turns out that Dave says he and his uncle made him go enlist the very day he went and visited him in that diner. So Klaus is responsible for just making that happen sooner. And I mean, I don't know how much more you can put on yourself to have that weight now, to know that no matter how hard you tried, you just couldn't change anything. And as for homosexuality in the 60s, I mean, yeah, it's a vehicle, just like you guys said, to kind of show how everything was back then versus kind of what we're obviously used to now. And how upsetting it was. And it I think myself, I enjoyed it. I as believable as somebody going back in time and trying to do that, I enjoyed the arc, in my opinion.
What'd you think of it, Alexis?
You know what? I'm calling it right now. I think Dave's going to appear in season 3 alive. We have, because you're right. We see a lot about the whole idea of the time travel, and that Klaus may have made it worse. But we are told, we see clear as day at the end that they have created a new timeline. I mean, sorry, for number 5's whole, we can't change the timeline, we can't kill Kennedy. It's like, dude, you have already created so many fucking ripples in the time stream.
The Swedes were killing people just without conscience. I mean, they were just laying out cops, and I was like, okay, well, they obviously don't care. this timeline's fucked. But
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've seen enough films and TV shows about time travel to know it's the little things that end up having more of an impact, not the big things.
Mhm.
I mean, again, we've already seen that there's going to be an alternate timeline. It would not surprise me if by doing all of this, by confronting him, even though he has signed up for Vietnam, Dave will somehow have survived, and we're going to see him again.
yeah.
So, Allison from season 1, she wasn't the most annoying character, but I didn't love her either. I really liked what they did with her this season. It takes her a little while to get her voice back, and over the course of several episodes, you see different iterations of her arriving in the 1960s. In the big flashback where you get the full story, she gets dropped in. She's walking down the street. She doesn't quite, she's disoriented as you would be, and she runs afoul of a gang of young white guys who are like, "Hey, sweet thing," and she's like, "Ugh," and of course she did not pay them the proper respect. They were like, "Hey, that's bullshit. Get back here." And so, of course, she takes off running, and she runs into the beauty salon, and and that's where her life begins anew. Oh, she starts sweeping hair, and she's saving money, and she's, and slowly but surely her voice is, her throat's healing, her voice is healing, and she's definitely not using her powers anymore, and this is where she meets the guy that becomes her husband, and because of who she is, what she is, the time she comes from, but also the time she's in, civil rights becomes extremely important to her. And it was definitely, you read the book, and there's nothing about civil rights in the book. The book Dallas is merely it's just a time travel story.
Isn't Allison white in the book?
Yes, Allison is white in the book. It's just a time travel story. They don't deal with any of the social justice ramifications of what was going on, what JFK meant and his subsequent assassination meant to the civil rights movement. None of that's in the book. It's all in the show. And so they used the opportunity. They're like, well, if we're going to go to early 1960s Dallas, and we know that whatever would have happened to the Civil Rights Act, it definitely got signed because Kennedy got shot. That has been my understanding of it, is that the weird thing about Kennedy's assassination is how much good it in actuality did for the civil rights movement. I can't go further into it than that. It's just, a little bit I've read on the subject and heard other people talk about it. And so they play around with that here. They play around with the idea of this being Texas, this being Dallas, and immediately Allison walks into a diner, and it's a whites only diner, and it's like and it becomes a central focal point for the movement, where it's like the the scenes of the young black gal who had to be marched into the school by the army and all of that. And I think the National Guard, it was what it was. It's like one of those moments, the kinds of civil rights things we've talked about, like the bit with the bus and all of that, and the various protests and sit-ins. They centralize it in this little street, in this diner, and I thought that the conversations that her and her husband have about the struggle and what it means, and he makes a point of saying, "Be dignified," which I liked.
Yeah.
I thought that was a strike, especially, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but I think when you think about when this came out, this comes out right in the middle of all the Black Lives Matter protests. I mean, it airs July 31st, so it was shot well before all the George Floyd stuff happened. But but the issues between the African American population and the police have been around for years. And this was absolutely playing with those ideas and saying, like, look at, if you're going to be confrontational, if you're going to fight for civil rights and liberties, you can't descend into animal behavior. You can't be violent, because then you're giving everybody who is a detractor an argument against you. Be dignified. And I really love that, and I love the fact that the writers of this show were very cognizant of that. So what did you think of Allison's story in this, Jesse?
So Allison represents to me like one of the prime examples of restraint that you could see. I mean, she is a black woman that pops up in this tumultuous time in the 60s, and we get to see her arc through that. But you got to think about, and they do a good job of showing this, she has the power with just saying something to change whatever situation she or any of her friends or family are in. And she doesn't want to do that. And one of the things that she points out, because I can't remember who calls her out on that, like, well, why are you doing this? Why aren't you using your powers? You can change these things. And she said, is it her husband? Yeah, Raymond Chestnut.
Yeah, we get a great scene where she finally reveals her powers, and he's freaked out, but then she takes him to a whites-only suit shop, and she uses her powers to get them grade A service and get this gorgeous suit on
I don't
him.
think it was whites only. What he said to them was, "I'm not letting you try on the clothing." The implication being, I'm not putting clothing white people might buy in dirty Negro skin. But if you'd like, the line is, "I'm not letting you try on. You can't try on clothing here. But if you'd like to make a purchase," at which point she says, "I heard a rumor that you'd let him try on anything he wants." Yeah. So it wasn't that it was whites only. It was, you just can't sully the clothing, you being who you are.
You're probably right. I couldn't remember the exact lines. I just remember them trying to get them to leave, and she uses her powers, and they get hot, and they're served hot tea, and they're measuring his cuffs, and he's got this smile on his face. Yeah.
Yeah, and when he asks her, like, why haven't you used these powers, she specifically says that she wanted to earn the spot where she is. And she didn't want to rely on her powers to get her there, which is a great thing, because what that means is that she's able, with all this power, she's able to actually go through with her friends that she met at the beauty parlor, this struggle. And she needed something, because she had no idea if number 5 was coming. She had no idea if anybody was around. All she knew, she was in the 60s, and that's it. She didn't know if anybody was still around. So she needed a family, and obviously the people at the beauty parlor that saved her from those ne'er-do-wells that chased after her were it. And she didn't use her powers. And then when she finally does, it makes me, as I was watching, I was like, oh, yes, please go to the diner and sit down and make that guy pour coffee all over himself. It was satisfying to see that happen. But I like the art.
She did talk about how using her powers, there's a cost, and you can, and like they're all like traumatized and kind of broken individuals to one degree or another, and you can see just in the past year what being under racial strife has done to her, and what the whole issue with the sit-in did to her, just that recently. And so when she's telling him, like, I don't want to use my powers, this gets out of hand very quickly. It's almost an admission she doesn't have a tremendous amount of control over it. Like, given the right set of circumstances and the right target, she could very easily make someone really hurt themselves, whether she wanted to or not. And that's the point of the coffee scene, is she didn't just have him pour coffee on himself once. She wouldn't stop doing it. It had to be, like, dragged out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to probably end up in the hospital and with, like, 3rd-degree burns.
Yeah, it was bad. I enjoyed her arc as well. Again, I didn't have anything to complain about with her.
Alexis, any other thoughts on Allison?
If you actually look at her growth from season 1, Allison's character, I think, goes through the most amount of change. In the first season, she's a movie actress, and it's abundantly clear she's been using her powers to get anything she wanted. We see a scene where she uses her powers on her daughter to get her to go to bed. She's been abusing these things since she left the Umbrella Academy. Now she's dropped into 1960s. She can't use her voice. And so for a long time, she has no use of her power. And then when she finally starts to get her voice back, yeah, she's a black woman in Dallas in the 1960s. It's not going to get any better. And she realizes that she cannot rely on her voice and her powers to help everyone.
Yeah.
This is such a great growth from the character, because if the person we saw in the first episode of season 1 got dropped in to this situation, she would have no qualms about just walking in and rumoring everything right.
I was going to say, she'd have turned Dallas into Wakanda.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, she had to learn the hard way through, because she, especially with the whole thing that happened with Vanya, and realizing that she had completely forgotten she had to use her powers on her little sister.
And she got a throat slash for her troubles.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, I didn't think that she would be recovering from that. When she got her throat slashed, I was like, there's no way she should be able to recover from this, which took me completely by surprise. But anyway, you can't just write her completely out of the book. She's got to stick around. So I guess comics.
No one ever truly dies.
Biology to know how that would heal. So.
All right, before we move on, let's go ahead and pay some bills here. Jesse.
Mark.
Have you been using the Grammarly extension on your computer to do all the works that you do in your essentiality?
Oh, you have no idea how much Grammarly's helped me, actually. I have been writing a few things hither and dither, and every once in a while, nobody's perfect, Mark. I may be essential, but I'm not perfect, and I make mistakes, and Grammarly's there to help me through.
Sometimes you spell essential with a Q, and you need Grammarly to help you spell check.
It's silent Q.
I once had a band that was called Anvil, and there was already a band called Anvil, so I was like, well, we'll be different. We'll spell ours with a Q, but the Q is silent. And so when I left the band, they changed the band from Anvil with a Q to just silent Q, and everyone called them Closet Queers.
Jeez. That's horrible.
But for you listeners of the TV Party Tonight on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network and the W2M network, Grammarly is offering a free download of the Grammarly software. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, if you want to be essential like Jesse Starcher, you need to get your Grammarly on. Go to getgrammarly.com/W2M network. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2M network to download Grammarly for free. All right. Let's talk about Vanya. Vanya has a very extended plot line, probably the other major plot line of this show, where due to everything that happened at the end of season 1, she has already lost her memory, but on top of which she also gets hit by a car, making things worse. And so, like George McFly in Back to the Future, right, Jesse?
I was going there.
They took her home, and while she attempts to regain her memory and try to figure out who she is and what she is and why she was wandering through the street in a Boss Hog white suit in the middle of Dallas. She is nannying for, they don't call him autistic, but he's clearly somewhere on the spectrum. Yeah. She's nannying for that child, and she's helping out the wife in the home. And we have the dad who's a traveling salesman and, typical Texas man. And over the course of the season, she and, the wife talks about, between the son's needs and the way that the father is and just the sign of the times, she doesn't feel seen. She doesn't feel heard. She doesn't feel like a fully developed human being. But Vanya sees her. Vanya talks to her. Vanya treats her like a full human being. And they end up falling in love. And, and when Vanya finally does figure out who she is, and she catches up with the rest of the Umbrella Academy, and there's talk of, this is not our time, and we cannot stay here, and we have to go home, she thinks, well, you can be a mom to, the child's name is Harlan, you can be a mom to Harlan anywhere, anytime. So just come with me. There's nothing, you can't possibly mean that much to the time stream. I think she actually says that line to one degree or another, where she's like, a mom and her child are not going to mean that much to the time stream that if they go forward in time, it's going to be a huge deal. And so a lot of this is her building a relationship with this woman, having a relationship with this child, putting impediments in that relationship, getting her and, having the husband kind of figure out what's going on and making veiled threats that she needs to leave, and then finally trying to get them out of there. And, the whole last 2 or 3 episodes where everything just kind of blows up directly in front of this woman, who then turns around and says, "You're never going to be able to promise me," it's the old Batman thing, right? "You're never going to be able to promise me that we'll be safe, that there won't be someone coming after you." And it's one thing for me to do that for myself. It's a whole other thing to put this child in perpetual danger because I want to be with you. And that's not fair to him. So I'll go to California, and maybe I can still be free, and I'll always love you, but we cannot be together, not with the life that, whether you like it or not, you are living. I have to say, as much as I talked about, I really hated Vanya's whole storyline and character in the first season, it kind of saves itself towards the end once you realize she had been doped up and her powers had been, she just sort of, blossoms into this angry, enraged person who had been traumatized by all of these experiences and, becomes the villain of the story. I was okay with that, but the early stuff with her I hated. I actually really liked Vanya's story in this one. She never loses me anytime. Elliot Page, I thought, did a really good job of portraying the character without snark and with a lot of earnest and charisma. And Elliot Page, going all the way back to the portrayal of Kitty Pryde in the X-Men, not known for a tremendous amount of charisma. But I thought he did...
They.
Thank you.
They're going by they.
Perfect. They put on a really good performance here. I was enraptured with They's performance, and I liked that storyline. I'll go to you first, Alexis. What did you think of Vanya's story?
The whole thing actually with Harlan hit me a little close to home. My uncle, who passed away a few years ago, spent most of his life in an assisted living facility under the thought that he was retarded. In recent years, right before he sadly passed away, it kind of came to light that he was very low-functioning autistic. And my grandparents at that time, autism was not known. They had no idea what it was. It hadn't been said. I don't even think it had been named. And I remember talking with relatives at his funeral about how tragic it was that he had been born at that time, because if he was born now, they would know what to do and they would know how to help him.
Just as an aside, my friend's daughter was born and presumably born autistic, and they early intervention, early schooling, and I think she's mainstream now and doesn't have any extra services, and as he describes her, she's a perfectly normal, loving child. But they knew from the beginning, and this kid was completely enveloped with services. Just as a contrast. Yeah,
like I said, it's really painful when you realize that my uncle, who I never really got to know at all, because again, I grew up thinking he was retarded. I did not. Again, I didn't know what autism was growing up, and he would have these random bouts where he would just, say something, and it was just very mumbled, and I couldn't hear, and it scared me when I was little, because I didn't know what it was. But seeing them, how they're working with Harlan in this series without actually knowing exactly what he has, and the way his father responds to everything, I'm like, oh my God, it's my Uncle Frank, and it hits. It really hurts.
Yeah, you want to talk about a recurring character? I think Harlan is probably primed to show up in season 3, because at the end of the season, as I think, is it Sissy that's leaving with him, heading over to California, or they're in the car and he's got something in his hand and he's got it floating. So the big, one of the big things, I don't obviously.
Oh, you know what he had in his hand? It's a stone sparrow.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. Well, now, hence the Sparrow Academy. All right, so, well, then, yeah, we'll be seeing him in season 3. That has to happen. Have we heard anything about that at all? Has that been confirmed?
Well,
No,
I hang on. I brought this up last night, the other night when we talked about Dallas. They said, in fact, that whatever was going to be in the Sparrow Academy book is what they're basing season 3 on. The problem is no one knows when the Sparrow Academy book's coming out either.
Oh, that hasn't even dropped yet?
No, and I think it's like a George R.R. Martin thing where it's like, well, here's what we're thinking, but it hasn't actually been done yet, so go do your own thing, and we'll, and the comic book will be its own thing, just like Dallas was, and wherever the twain shall meet.
Well, they did fine with this, and it sounds like there was a few things definitely left out of Volume 2. I mean, it sounded like Volume 2 was just a framework, and then Netflix built around it. So, I mean, I think they would be fine if they went off and did their own thing. But anyway,
we've seen them pull a lot of stuff back together from the different series. I mean, the Handler in the first book is clearly supposed to be. She gets a lot of her lines and character from what the Talking Goldfish gets. And then in the second season, they actually bring in the Talking Goldfish.
Yeah.
I was utterly irritated they didn't give number 5 his opportunity to swallow the fish.
You didn't watching Kate Walsh swallow the fish?
It's not here's the thing. He's the one that does it in the book. Mm-hmm. And I wanted him to have his moment, and they gave it to her instead, and it's like, meh, all right, sure.
Well, so anyway, as for Vanya's relationship with Sissy and how that develops, it didn't wear on me either. I think a lot of the big beats, obviously, is Vanya and Harlan's interaction with each other, her saving Harlan after jumping into the lake, and then infusing apparently some of her power into him. I think that's what happened. And then him going ballistic at the end, actually, not meaning to, but killing his own dad, which I'm sure that if there isn't enough daddy issues in this season 2, I'm sure Harlan's going to carry some daddy issues with him over in season 3. But yeah, it was Vanya's the bomb. I mean, that's where we end up again. Vanya is the reason that the apocalypse is going to happen, because she. Oh, can we talk about how fun it was to watch the FBI give her LSD and she starts tripping and like there's eyeballs all over the walls, and I can't remember which song hit. Was it Queens of the Stone Age that hit? There was a song that hit, and I was like, I recognize the band. I recognize this. At 1.5 speed, it's kind of tough sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I swear it was Queens of the Stone Age that was playing. But regardless, watching her trip on LSD, but again, she ends up being the catalyst for the apocalypse, and it feels like she just cannot outrun that destiny sometimes, at least in 2 seasons.
And like I said...
Hey, Mark, isn't there a great service where we can find that song that they use in that episode?
Watch him bury you, okay?
No. I can only bury Alexis or really anybody once or twice per show. If I go to 3 and 4 times, people are going to start not wanting to do this with me. So
to force me to watch Jiu-Jitsu, Mark. Anything that you could do to me was no worse than that. Sorry, I was trying to. Honestly, I was trying to be clever. Okay.
Get it done. Get it out of the way, there, Cyan McGee. Come on.
You're right, Alexis. My eyes crossed doing that, by the way, just now. There is a service.
I can't hear your blinking, and now I have to listen for the eyes crossing.
Yeah, the clanking you heard was my eyes crossing as I said, "You're right, Alexis." Here, let me write down the time that I wasn't prepared to do. Oh. Okay. You're absolutely right, Alexis. If you want to hear Queens of the Stone Age or any of the great bands and songs that were a part and parcel of the Umbrella Academy seasons 1 and 2, and boy, was the use of music great in these 2 seasons. Just a lot of great songs, great uses of them. I love them myself, and then when I wanted to go back and hear them, you know what service I used, Alexis? I used AmazonMusic.com. And as a matter of fact, if anybody else wants to check out all the music from the Umbrella Academy, you can get a free 30 days on us by going to getamazonmusic.com/W2M network. Getamazonmusic.com/W2M network to get a free 30 days of the Amazon Music service. You could actually check out My Chemical Romance, who the person in that band, Gerard Way, is actually who came up with the Umbrella Academy. And I don't know if you know this or not, but he said on July 29th, 2020, he actually did an interview with Forbes that Volume 4 would be entitled Umbrella Academy, Sparrow Academy, and he said it would finally start to address what happened to the other children born on the same day. That was almost a year ago, and we have no idea when this book is coming out, but he did say a year ago that he was working on it. Maybe it'll be like Jiu-Jitsu and be half done and just published that way in a coloring book format.
Throw something.
Why do I get the feeling that instead of making fun of Venom from now on, we're just going to make fun of Jiu-Jitsu?
We'll make fun of everything. All of it. Even the stuff we like. So yes, get a free 30 days of Amazon Music on us by clicking our link in the description. Get on AmazonMusic.com/W2M network. Anything else on Vanya? I thought she had good chemistry with the actress that plays Sissy. I thought they look cute together. You know, when they finally do end up having sex and are in bed together, they kind of watched them in the bed, and I was like, oh, they look pretty good together. I have to say, like I said, Elliot Page, I thought, for some odd reason, and I haven't been the biggest fan of Elliot Page's work in previous movies. Like I saw Juno, and I like Juno and everything, but they always came across to me as kind of a Daria, just, like the woman who plays Darlene in The Connors. Just like every character you play is just dour and rough and, just seems like
Melissa
you hate
Gilbert.
Life. Yeah.
Melissa Gilbert.
The new version of Laura Birch.
Right. Like I said, very Daria-ish. And I feel like this one, one of my favorite scenes of the episode is where Klaus, and Allison are dancing in the beauty parlor.
Sarah Gilbert, not Melissa. Sorry. I had to make sure I got that correct.
Good.
Yeah. Actually, one of my favorite things is just the relaxed moments with the siblings. These characters all have really great chemistry together, and you're absolutely right that if it wasn't for what number 5 tries to do, they would not have anything to do with each other. But they are still so good at actually showing that despite everything, despite all the animosity, all the stress that came from growing up as child superheroes, and how much every time they see each other, they're probably reminded of a million things that they want to forget, they still love each other.
Yeah, that scene at the near the end where she gets in the car, and after they had said no, because she was going to go back to try and save, she knew Harlan was in trouble, and she gets in the car after asking them and the rest of her family, like, can you come and help me? They're like, no, we've got bigger things we need to do. She gets in the car, and it turns out all of her family get in the car like within minutes after that, because they're all, they're going to support her and help her out. So yeah, it's good to see them act like a family, which again, that's another reason why I like this show. You don't see Robot Man running around pretending the rest of his teammates are a family, right, Mark?
Fuck.
Yeah. Now, I think the best way to summarize their development as a family is there's not one thing they genuinely like about one another, but there's no one else on the planet who's going to understand what they're going through.
Yeah, very good.
So we haven't talked really a lot about Diego yet, and I want to talk about him and the new addition to the cast, which is the girl Lila that he hooks up with, who it turns out is the handler's daughter, adopted daughter. Diego, I barely remember him from the first season, so I can't compare and contrast, but his sort of, single-minded, I must save President Kennedy thing was funny for the first episode, kind of funny the second episode. By about mid-season, I'm like, I'm done with this. Move the fuck on. And then he...
I think everybody else, like all his brothers and sisters, are saying the same thing. That's what makes Diego, is like he just is singular-minded, and that's what everybody else wants to tell him. Like, dude, just stop, for crying out loud. And he doesn't.
His scenes opposite Lila are good. The actor playing him when he's involved in this relationship and he's betrayed and all of that, and you know, those conversations are well done. Everything else where him interacting with number 5 and number 5, you know, taking turns calling him and Luther a dummy, I was like, I wasn't amused. There were other things in the show I was much happier to watch. But I liked him and Lila. I liked their on-screen chemistry. Those two are going to make awesome babies together. They had a really good look to them and a really good feel, and I enjoyed their scenes. Alexis, what did you think of Diego and his relationship with Lila? And then Jesse, go ahead, jump in when she's done.
Sure.
Lila is a very interesting character, and it's interesting how they introduced her as just another person in the mental ward, which I guess she was planted there on purpose by the handler, I guess.
That's what I assumed as well, is that they had somehow learned that Diego was there, and most likely it was because he was making such a ruckus of trying to save the president, and I'm sure that tipped off whatever the commission or whatever they're called. So that's my guess.
Yeah, it does make the handler even more when she drops that adult number 5 was the one who killed her biological parents, even though she's the one who signed the paperwork.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I think one of the fun things I liked about Diego, and by extension Lila, was a little bit more of the development of their powers. Because Diego in the first season, you just think he's like Bullseye from the Marvel comics, you know? He just always hits his mark. We see in the second season, no, he can actually manipulate pretty much anything if it's already in the air, because he's able to reverse the bullets that are being shot at them.
Yeah, I was happy to see that because, again, this was, just like you said, in the first season, you don't get really much of an idea of what he can do other than, I think I got the sense that he could somehow manipulate the trajectory with, like, he had some kind of subtle power, but I couldn't see it, and I didn't know what it was, and of course they didn't bring it to the forefront. And then in that final episode of this season, holy crap, when, like, all those bullets are coming at him, and he's able to just, like, I don't know if it's mental manipulation or if it's just like you're saying, if it's in the air, he can take care of it somehow. But, yeah, I really enjoyed that part of Diego and learning what he could do.
And not to mention, it was great seeing Lila and the fact that she is... Yeah, what was the line from Diego? She's like, she's not our sister, is she?
Oh, no. We're not biologically related, are we? And it's funny because all of them are not biologically related in any way, but he's got that worry that for some reason, since he slept with her, that they might actually be related somehow. Oh, man. You
know what? Luther and Allison have already, done whatever, so...
Yeah. I really like Diego this season. Did you have anything else to say? I didn't want to jump in.
No, like I said, he is really enjoyable. Diego is just so much fun because he, in and of himself, blah, there's the English. I could use Grammarly trying to rewrite that. He is the exact same as the knives he throws. He is a bullet. He doesn't want to be stopped. He just wants to keep going forward in one direction.
Yep. Yeah. Point me one way, and I've got my mind set, and I'm going there.
I love number 5's description of him. Think Batman, and then lower your expectations.
Yes.
Yeah. Or the scene after he fights with Reginald. Reginald friggin' shanks him, and he's just like, I got stabbed by my father.
Oh, man. That's great stuff. I think that as far as favorite characters go, I really like Diego in this season. Lila was pretty cool, too. I mean, just to kind of see that she's kind of the mimic of all the rest of the powers that these people have. I mean, there's at one point where Rumor has her in a headlock or something and is about ready to say something, and then Lila says it back to her, says something, and causes her not to breathe. So you can see she has that power set. She has the teleportation power set that Five has. So all this stuff coming together for her makes her at least a very interesting character as we move forward. There was another part for Diego had some of the funny. The relationship between Diego and Lila. Okay, it was fun to watch that kind of blossom, and then when he finds out she's betrayed him. One of my favorite lines from this season is when she shows up, and all Diego can say is like, "Oh, it's you and your stupid face." I was like, perfect, just perfect.
I'll tell you, a fun drinking game. Take a drink in any television show when a character says, "I lied to protect you," because you'll be blackout drunk and have a pickled liver by the time you're done. I'm not saying it's an overused trope, but it's an overused trope.
It's an overused trope. And to see like the inner workings of the commission. Oh, am I getting that right? I cannot remember what it's called. I keep calling it the commission. Whatever it was, that the time travel place that's kind of
that's
watching.
Okay, Jesse. The show hasn't even come out yet, but I kept thinking of it in my head as the Time Variance Authority.
Okay.
I did the same thing. Oh my god.
We should stop watching Marvel stuff. It's rotting our brain.
But yeah, no, that scene where he's forced to watch the orientation video.
Yes.
Version of Jurassic Park's Mr. DNA.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yes, it is the commission, by the way.
Commission, okay. I want to say that he had his hand. Lila and him had his hands in some of the coolest fight scenes set to music. That hallway scene with it was him, number 5, and Lila versus the Swedes in that hallway. I really enjoyed that. I gotta say that you mentioned the music, and it's not really much of a joke. There's a lot of great songs on this soundtrack to this series, and to watch some of it get put into some of the crazy stuff that's happening. There is a fight scene set when the Swedes show up to murder Allison and her husband. There is a fight scene set to Backstreet's Back.
Yep.
And it's just perfect. So
the actress who plays Lila is Ritu Arya. She's a British actress and a drummer. She became known for her role as Dr. Megan Sharma in the British soap opera Doctors. Jesse, I know you're a Doctor Who fan. She was in an episode of Doctor Who. She played Gat in Fugitive of the Jadoon. She's in the movie with Dwayne Johnson and Gal Gadot that's coming out on Netflix called Red Notice. And most recently in 2019, other than the Umbrella Academy, she was in the movie Last Christmas.
Okay, very good.
So, she's done some stuff.
She does.
I'm sure we'll see more of her.
Too bad being in Last Christmas, nobody saw it.
Yeah, well, Last Christmas, I gave you my heart. Anyway, speaking of Last Christmas, Kate Walsh as the handler is fan-fucking-tastic. I think she might...
to punch a character since Dolores Umbridge.
Oh, my God. I don't think I've... there's another character on the show besides number 5 who I like as much as Kate Walsh as the handler. First of all, and I'm not like a costume guy, but her outfits are fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't... No one wears a hat and veil quite like Kate Walsh.
That scene where she's getting dressed to be appointed the leader of the commission, and she looks like she's getting coronated as queen. She's got a freaking tiara!
It's so good. She wears some just wonderfully fancy dresses. She's got some great cats and crowns. She like number 5. Like, I kind of like the interspersing of sort of old-timey dialogue in your modern dialogue. And so, she'll be talking to Lila, and she'll say something like, "Oh, pish-posh," It's like... She has this very out-of-time sense about her. And, as far as villains go, she she doesn't want to lose power. She doesn't want to be deposed, and she feels like if she were in charge, things would be great. And so she's doing whatever she needs to do to amass the amount of power that she wants and to make sure that nobody can take it from her. Perfect. It's not that complicated. She's not that complicated. And I just think she's a radiantly fantastic, wonderfully costumed character. And Alexis wants to punch her.
Not to mention, we find out through the season that she's basically copying Reginald, and she took Lila because she was one of the, what was it, 43 kids?
Oh, I can't remember. I can't remember the number.
It was 40-something. So she took one of them, and then she tries to take Harlan because she can see that he's got a portion of Vanya's powers as well. So you can tell she's trying to get her own little team going as well. Her own little league of assassins, as it were.
It's another character that surprised me that she, again, showed up. I mean, they're getting ready to cremate her, and she's got a bullet wound in her head. And she wakes up, and I'm like, wait a second, what is going on? Yeah, she is. She's, again, so over the top and so just wonderfully characterized that she was a delight to have as a villain on the show. And she definitely died this time, though, right? Because, I mean, I think she died once from the Swede, and then I think twice from the Swede when 5 rewound time and let it happen again, pretty much. So we won't be seeing her again. Well, never mind. Anytime you got time travel, anything's possible.
Yeah,
I was going to say, all bets. First of all, with this show, all bets are off. You never know who's going to show back up. And considering she was shot dead in the head, and it was like, I got better.
Yeah, she's back.
Let me explain how most times getting shot in the head does not end with you getting better.
Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, they seem to be going in a different direction with the Sparrow Academy stuff. And it looks like the Monocle, who, my God, the guy playing the Monocle, like, he plays it pitch perfect. Colm Feore as Reginald Hargreaves. I mean, he's fucking great, but what a bastard! Like, I think he's a bigger villain, considering like the light meal they have. Was it the light lunch or light dinner that they have, where he's like, all right, you're not CIA, and you're definitely not MI6, so who the hell are you people? And and they're kind of going through their powers and everything, and he was like, yeah, I'm not into this, bye. and then something else happens, and then he's like, a moment, number 5? He said, you seem to be the only one with any sense. And I love that scene because like he's talking to number 5, and and number 5's telling him about like opening up to him. And this is not a guy you can open up to. He's not. He talked about this with Luther, that he doesn't have children. He's not interested in having children. Children are terrible, and that and you realize that the only reason why he ever took those kids in was because he wanted human weapons, not because he was any interested in children, and he treated them as such. But we knew that already. So it was interesting, and it was nice to kind of see number 5 open up to him and talk about him messing up time travel as badly as he has. And he basically says to him, he was like, well, maybe your ambition's, bigger than your ability. He actually says the word appetite.
When he gets around the kids, obviously you can tell that there's, I don't want to say a disdain, but he's definitely not a father. Yeah. They call him dad, but he's not a father. But then, like that interaction he had with 5, he gave him the knowledge and the tool in order to kind of progress further. But again, that's just like,
which pays off at the end in the conclusion, where 5, like the Flash, uses it to save a grave mistake that was made. Yeah.
So he gives him the knowledge that a father would, but he does not have the bedside manner that a father should.
No, Alexis, you were trying to break in there. What were you going to say?
Well, you brought up the whole thing with Luther, but the only other thing I was going to add, if this show was made about 15 years prior, who else could just easily see John Hurt in this role?
Mm-hmm.
Because I sort of got, every time I watch it, it's like, no, John Hurt's dead. That's not John Hurt.
Yeah.
No, I do. And again, I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with him in the next season, because we have Grace, who he modeled, he modeled his little robot assistant after, and that's the kid's quote-unquote mother. But then
she left him.
Yeah, she left him. So does he, still make her, or is he going to make pick another woman to make as his, do the Sparrow Academy kids even have a robot mom?
Yeah. Again, that's another thing that was a result of something that one of the kids did. It was Diego going over to his mom and saying, you need, look, this is what he's going to do. She went snooping, found out some information. He's like, I can't tell you. And then she's like, well, all right, well, I'm out. And she left. So again, it's a result of something that one of the kids did. And really,
if you could build a woman for yourself, wouldn't you?
Of course I would. I know you would, Mark.
Right.
There's no doubt in my mind that you would have relations with a robot.
I'd at least give the relationship with the human a chance to work out. But I mean, if it doesn't, yeah, robot.
Now, what do you think is under the mask? Because we have that just well, it's not brief. I mean, he shows up after Kennedy gets killed and talks to the Majestic 12, and he expresses how displeased everything is. One of the Majestic 12s, which looks like a Man in Black, I don't know who it is, but looks like a Man in Black, makes kind of like a veiled threat, like you're going to continue to do what you're doing no matter how upset you are with us. And then he proceeds to become a lizard man or something.
His freaking face, he's an alien.
Now, have they even approached that in the books, Mark? I haven't had a chance to listen to the source material podcast, but was that approached in the books? Do I get spoiled?
Not in Dallas. Not that I'm aware of. And Alexis, would it have been funny if he had unmasked and it was Alan Tudyk?
Resident Alien joke?
Uh-huh.
All right. That's a good one.
Thank you.
No, that was really great.
There's no way you could put a villain from a DC show into a Marvel show. That would never happen. Or no, excuse me, a Dark Horse show. Actually, it could happen because it's Netflix. You never know.
That's right.
Hey, the
never know.
Or Alan Tudyk. I think we expressed that clearly.
That's right. Yes. Absolutely.
All right, so, we talked about the handler, we talked about the monocle, we talked about all the cast members. I guess, we'll just briefly touch on the conclusion, and then we can wrap up for the night, unless there's any other burning desires. So this all leads to a face-off at the barn, and the handler has all of the agents warp onto the farm, and they have a big fight. The agents all get taken out they all start shooting at the Umbrella Academy, and it's Diego who saves them by directing the bullets back at it, and they all die. Is that how that goes? Am I remembering that right?
Dr. Manhattan showed up.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Vanya comes out. Remember, she comes flying out of the barn, and she, lays waste after he kind of redirects
So it's Vanya that takes out the army.
Yeah, Vanya lays out the army.
Okay.
Saves their lives, but Vanya is the one who delivers the final blow.
Yeah, and that's when you see the only two left standing are the handler and Lila, who've been shielded, and you're like, wait a second, what's going on here? And that's where we learn, oh, crap, Lila has got powers, too.
Mm-hmm. And so they fight. And it ends with the handler blowing everybody away. And then in the first iteration, she wins, right? She blows everybody away, and then that's it. It's over. And in the second one, he stops her from shooting everybody, and then she's subsequently shot by the Swede.
I think the Swede comes in on the first run as well.
Okay.
She lays everybody out. There's a big discussion between Lila and her, and she shoots Lila, so you can tell that there's no love lost there, if I remember correctly. She shoots Lila because she's asking too many questions, and then the Swede shows up and kills her. And then number 5 rewinds time, stops the handler from coming in, and then
number 5 activates the Omega 15 from Galaxy Quest.
I know that reference too.
I mean, and look, I always go back to this. I take a drink, put it on the bingo card, Andrew. You know, I think for people watching these shows that there's not some sort of explosion of superhero violence at the end. People are unsatisfied. And so we get the punchy parts where they get to do superhero stuff. But for me, like, the most satisfying part of this was Vanya going back to Sissy and her having that conversation about how you can never promise me that we'll always be safe and that my son will be safe and he doesn't deserve a life of, you know, imminent danger, constant danger.
Of course, based on what we've seen, he's about to get it regardless.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
You know, that to me is the strongest stuff. You know, them just having, you know, a gunplay and a fist fight. The other thing that worked for me only because it was set up earlier, and so that, you know, I like a nice dramatic payoff. You know, I like when things are well written. You know, you have number 5 able to control his time travel enough to save the day. So I liked all of that. What'd you think of the ending, Jesse?
That was okay. I mean, everybody survives pretty much that we care about. The family is closer together, and everybody has to say their painful goodbyes. But are we going to talk about the cliffhanger? I mean, you kind of didn't touch on the fact that we went forward in
Let's
time.
wrap up the proper conclusion, and then we can talk
Gotcha.
about the cliffhanger because then we can talk about, like, what are the expectations.
I hear you. So yeah, I mean, everybody having to say their painful goodbyes. It's touching. You know, you want to see Allison be able to. Well, yeah, I don't know. We were shipping Allison and Luther pretty hard there in the first season, and I was wanting that relationship to continue. Clearly, there's an obstacle here, but you see her marry. She gets married to a man, and you want to see her continue her life with Raymond, but she can't. And it's like that for just about everybody. Klaus has to come to the realization that Ben's no longer there. Vanya with Sissy everybody just has to kind of wrap their lives up in the 60s and head back home to the 2019s. So I enjoyed it for what it was. Loved the battle scenes. I mean, my goodness, I think some of the visuals were fantastic throughout all this season, and that final battle was a lot of fun. Watching Diego use his powers, watching Vanya come out there, just like I said, Dr. Manhattan style, and laying everybody out, and it was decent.
All right, Alexis, your thoughts on the conclusion?
The battle scene was great. I mean, they had a lot to, top, considering that last season we ended with the moon crashing into Earth.
Yeah.
I really like the wrap up with Allison and her husband because he's willing to go to the future. He loves Allison. He's made peace with her powers, and he's like, yeah, I'll go to the future. There's a little bit there where he's like, well, it's got to be better in the future than it is now, and she's like,
somewhat.
Yeah.
There's still work to do.
Yeah, but she ends up basically leaving him behind because she realizes that even though he's willing to give up everything for her, he is too important to the civil rights movement.
Well,
She's
didn't he say he was staying because there was still work to do?
I think I could have sworn she left a note that said, "You need to stay because there's more work to do." I know she left him a note because I know like that's their goodbye is him reading the note, but I don't know. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I thought he was at one point telling her. I know like there's a really funny line about wait, there's a black president, like how black, and she's like, all right, let's move on. But I could have sworn, and maybe you're right, Alexis. It was only a few hours ago. How am I supposed to remember? But I could have sworn he was like, for things to get to where we are now in 2019, where you're from, more work has to be done here, and there's not enough of us to do that, so I need to stay and help. That was the impression I got. Well, you may be right, because I watched this when it premiered. So, and again, I watched the recap, but they didn't touch on that part. That's just the way I remember it. I could be 100% wrong.
I was working.
It's good. Welcome to TV Party Tonight, where we half watch a show. We may be sleeping, we may be medicated, who knows?
Like, yeah, one of us watches it on a double speed to get through it in a day, and the other one watched it over a year ago.
I nodded off at parts. But all right. So I think, I think as far as wrapping up 20 episodes of this story, I thought it was pretty satisfactory. I thought there was a lot of growth with the characters. And, and overall, if there's not a season 3, I would have been satisfied with where we landed with this. I didn't feel like this didn't feel like the story wasn't over. But they do leave a stinger at the end. They do get home, and when they come home, they've entered into yet another alternate timeline where there is no Umbrella Academy. Now, when they left, they were all actually wanted. They were all wanted terrorists for their role in the Kennedy assassination, such as it was or wasn't. And that never gets resolved. So
yeah, what an eclectic group of
assassins.
of assassins of yeah.
It's quite the trial of the Chicago 7 there.
Got a hippie, got an ape man. All right.
A black activist, the usual.
A 12-year-old boy.
Right. Well, what Jesus Christ, what terrorist group doesn't have a 12-year-old boy in it? So they get back to the mansion, and they run afoul of the Monocle, who is like, this is not the Umbrella Academy, this is the Sparrow Academy. And Ben's alive and leading the thing and has an evil mustache. And a bunch of other kids come out. That has been cast already. We have Justin Cornwell as Marcus, Brittany Oldford as Faye, Jake Epstein as Alfonso, Genesis Rodriguez as Sloane, and Cassie David as Jamie. I don't know who any of these people are by name.
I'm excited. Go ahead, Alexis.
I was gonna say, it's like, I don't know who any of them are, but again, it's like one of them's a freaking floating gelatinous cube. D&D players quake with fear.
Hey, Mark, take a look at that checklist. All right, now grab your pen and mark off alternate reality.
Okay, Jesse. All right, so I'm looking at just kind of like the brief wiki links on these guys. So Justin Cornwell, known for playing young Geronicus Jangle in the Netflix original movie Jingle Jangle. He's also in the CBS crime drama Training Day. Brittany Oldford is known for playing Katie Campbell in Skins, Alma Walker on America Horror Story Asylum, and Remy Beaumont on Ravenswood, and Reagan on Hunters.
Not Remy Beaumont, not Remy LeBeau.
No.
Okay.
Jacob Epstein, he played Craig Manning on Degrassi, The Next Generation. He also played Will in the first national tour of American Idiot on Broadway. Genesis Rodriguez. She has a bunch of Telemundo roles. Perfect. She also co-starred with the late Paul Walker in Hours. And then finally, Cassie David created a web series called 86th. Wrote a bunch of essays. And the only other credit she has to her name is the Umbrella Academy in this one particular wiki preview link. So, all right, there's your Sparrow Academy.
Okay.
So, Jesse, I mean, the book isn't even out yet, but you guys seem to know something about the Sparrow Academy. Like, what are you expecting here?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it's got to be the darkest timeline, right? Like we're gonna pop up into some alternate time that clearly Ben's alive here. That's what I loved about the ending of this season, is it got us so stoked as to what is going to happen for the third season. Again, it's dropping this family in. It's a fish out of water scenario yet again, and they have to turn around and deal with it. And not only that, they're going to have to deal with their father. Diego got knifed in this season by his dad. Now, granted, his dad didn't know who he was, but his father figure took a knife to his gut, and now it looks like most likely in season 3, I have a feeling they're going to be battling them. Now, I can't go into this thing expecting the Sparrow Academy and the Umbrella Academy are just going to get hold hands and get along. I don't think that's going to happen because now I would assume that this reality they're going to want to change it back. but I'm sure that the residents of said reality are not going to want to be written out of existence. So there's your rub. Harlan's going to show up. Obviously we just that's got to happen, I would imagine. And it wouldn't surprise me again to see the Handler. I would love to see Cha-Cha and oh my goodness, help me out again. Hazel. I always forget his name. I would love to see. Just forget that. I loved Hazel in the and Cha-Cha. Didn't Cha-Cha die in that first season? I can't remember.
Yeah, Hazel kills her.
Hazel. Okay, all right. So anyway, I love that dynamic. I loved seeing those two in there. It felt like they were kind of replaced with the Swedes, but you never know. Cha-Cha and Hazel may be alive in this reality. So man, I can't wait. It's going to be. It checks all the boxes for me. I'm all excited about it. I doubt we'll be getting the 7 stages of paradox psychosis again, which was one of my favorite things from this season. Which is here. I'll list them for you: denial, itching, extreme thirst and urination, excessive gas, acute paranoia, uncontrolled perspiration, and homicidal rage. I had to get those in there before the podcast ended. I'm excited about season 3. Alexis, your turn.
I am dying to find out just how much they screwed up in the time flow to create this alternate timeline. I want to know what's different. I want to know who's alive and who's dead. I mean, I love stories when you get to do an alternate timeline, because essentially you're throwing out every rule in the book. You were saying, nope, alternate timeline, nothing matters anymore. And you can have so much fun with it. And oh my God, I am dying to see what these guys did. Especially since one of my favorite things about this show is how many very, very subtle Easter eggs they put throughout the series. The show creators have made it clear that if somebody notices something, it's on purpose. You have scenes where a certain actor has appeared in multiple scenes in different episodes. And they're like, what, were you guys just short on extras? And the show creators are like, no, there's a reason. And in season 2, I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but there were 43 hidden sparrows.
Oh, wow. No.
There were sparrows everywhere. There were on signs, on mailboxes, on posters, on equipment. They're just little sparrows painted. And I love that. And I love the idea that I don't like it when a show tries to retcon through a back tread and essentially say, no, this was planned all along, but I do love it when a show actually thinks ahead. My favorite example is Futurama, where you find out in the 4th season that Fry falling into the freezer tube was planned all along. And a lot of people could say, oh, they just wrote that. But if you go back and watch the pilot, you see, Nibbler's shadow. And they're like, no, we planned this. This was always going to be revealed. And I love that. I love it when they put in that little hidden detail to be revealed at a later date. I just love shows that do that. So I am so excited to see what they have planted so far that's going to appear again.
So, this was nominated for a bunch of awards in 2019 and 2020, but I'm going to focus on the 2021 awards. Hasn't won anything just yet, but it was nominated for Best Superhero Series as a Critics' Choice Super Award, nominated for an Outstanding Drama Series for a GLAAD Media Award, nominated for an Annie Award for Best Character Animation Live Action, for a Saturn Award, Best Superhero Adaptation Television Series, which actually that one's pending. And Elliot Page was nominated for Best Performance in a Show. See, I knew I was onto something. For an MTV Movie Awards. And that's still pending. It did win in 2020 the Art Directors Guild Award for 1 hour contemporary single camera series for the episode We Only See Each Other at Weddings and Funerals. So, people apparently like this show. It did 9. I must be on the right track here because the Rotten Tomatoes score for season 1 was like 75. This one for season 2 was 90. So,
deserved, I think. I think it was pretty deserved.
Yeah, I absolutely think this second season, and I can say that even with the benefit of not being on heavy meds, was a better season than the first season. And this was one of those where I feel like I needed to do it because of what we do on the network. But after having watched season 2, I can say that it was actually a really enjoyable 8 hours I spent watching it, and I'm looking forward to season 3 now. So with that said, Jesse, when are you not going to be Essential anymore?
Oh boy, I don't know. It just seems like it's never ending anymore. And when you think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, you need to step out of the way of the train, because that's
it turns out it's a train.
It's coming right at you. So at some point, I am hoping that I will be able to get back on a regular podcast schedule. But as for right now, I plan on recording a Unspoken Issues here pretty soon. So the WCW #1 should hopefully be recorded by the end of tomorrow. We've had to delay that a couple times, but we're planning on knocking that out. And then we have a couple other episodes that I'm sure that are going to be scheduled because of some polls being won. But other than that, I mean, really, other than catching the syndicated source materials, I'm not doing much other than just hopping on a podcast here and there with Mark Radulich. So that's all I got going on.
I got you for double duty next week.
What's going on next week?
You and I are and Winfrey are going to review that Ruby Rose Morgan Freeman movie, Vanquish, Monday night.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then Wednesday night, you and me and a couple of Mortal Kombat soundtracks.
Oh, man, am I excited for that.
Liu Kang.
Yeah.
Liu Kang. Sub-Zero. Friendship. Get over here.
Oh, yeah, you can watch for our drop of MK Legacy, which I'm in the process of finishing up the edit, where Teasley and I sat down for, oh my goodness, it's going to come to about 2 hours talking about the first season and second season of Mortal Kombat Legacy. That'll be dropping Friday. And I'll tell you, if you haven't at least got your itch scratched for Mortal Kombat, you can check out that web series. I really enjoyed it.
Outstanding. All right, so Sunday kicked off with a re-airing of the Long Road to Ruin Spock trilogy, Star Trek Spock trilogy, where we had Jason Offit on, and then myself and Evan Bevins, we talked about the book Dallas, of which season 2 was in part based on. You heard me and Alexis discuss our shared trauma of the Jiu-Jitsu book and movie. Today I re-released a very, 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 very first Metal Hammer of Doom when it wasn't known as Metal Hammer of Doom. We reviewed Death Clock, Death Album 3. And then tomorrow night, Pat and I are finishing up our boxing series. On Friday, we have a re-airing of the DMU Hollywood for the Wolverine. And then on Saturday, another Long Road to Ruin re-air. This is the X-Men trilogy. Next week is the Oscars and Mortal Kombat stuff. So we've got a re-airing of our On Trial where we debated Forrest Gump over Shawshank Redemption as far as who should have won the 1995 Oscar debate. The aforementioned review of Vanquish. Chris Sheehan and I are reviewing a Mortal Kombat comic, Mortal Kombat X, Volume 1, Blood Ties. We'll be reviewing TNA Impact, that's Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann, and then another Damn You Hollywood for the new Mortal Kombat that airs this Friday in theaters and on HBO Max. The aforementioned Mortal Kombat soundtrack, Metal Hammer of Doom. We're gonna just pick selections from all three: the Mortal Kombat 1995 movie soundtrack, More Kombat, and Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Thursday night, myself and Sean Comer will be doing an on trial for the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie, and then on Friday, the 30th, with Without Remorse showing up on Amazon Prime. We decided to re-air our Long Road to Ruin for the Jack Ryan trilogy, which is The Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games, and Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I don't remember the last one. And Clear and Present Danger, that's the name of it. And then, Jesse, oh boy, you have a syndicated source material on Saturday. What if Spider-Man joined the Ku Klux Klan? No. What if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four?
I don't remember talking about that one. I would have remembered that.
No, it says, what if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four?
There we go. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm getting into my what if run of things here.
My God,
so
you really were like obsessed with that comic for a while. I remember that, where like you couldn't get a guest on, and all you did was a bunch of what ifs.
I would have done more if I could have. I really would have.
Till I took over and like, you're gonna do this now.
Mark Radulich pointed at me and said, "I noticed you, sir. I see you."
Hey, you don't seem to be doing anything related to what else we're doing on this network. Here, change your entire podcast for me, thanks.
As a matter of fact, let me just come on the show.
All right, Alexis, take us out, take us home.
Alexis, did you mute yourself? There you go.
No, I did. Sorry, Mark. After you said "take us home," it sounded like the call dropped there for a second. So I was like, "Wait a minute, what happened?" I don't know if that's my phone or you guys or not. So I'm sorry. Did you want me to do my plugs?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. And hey, for those who are fans of the Umbrella Academy, we have our Umbrella Academy-inspired charm bracelet, featuring charms inspired by all members of the Academy. And you know after Season 3 comes out, we will be adding a Sparrow Academy one. I am so excited for that. In the meantime, we are getting ready for our Memorial Day sale. We are going to be doing a charity drive during this to help Tiny Homes for Homeless Veterans. This is a wonderful charity. I'd like to thank my mom, actually. She's the one who introduced me to it. It is a great benefit to those who have served and are facing so many problems when they come back. So we're going to be getting ready for that. Pay attention to... That sounds horrible. Just stay alert to our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be dropping more details as we get a little bit closer to the sale. As always, you can find all of our items on our Etsy and Handmade at Amazon shops. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic.
All right, folks.
Oh, hey, hold on. Now, I want to just, I know you want to wrap it up, and I just wanted to get in here and also mention that Alexis and I are going to be hosting a trivia night, Radulich and Broadcasting style. We're going to record it for a podcast coming up in May. So if you guys like to play along, feel free to keep an eye out for when that show is going to be dropping. I think we've got our contestants, don't we?
We do. We got a couple of people here who have participated in the network before. We've got a couple of my friends who are also going to be promoting a store that they work with a family member. So really excited about that. And the theme for the first month of trivia is, drumroll please, sci-fi.
Right.
So it's all going to be like Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov?
Yeah. Direct quotes, actually.
Okay. Yeah, that's how I would do the trivia. Read from a Heinlein or Isaac Asimov selection, and then have them guess the book.
All right. Thanks, Mark. You're not playing. You go ahead. You go watch your violence, okay? We'll have fun. Directly quoting those books.
That's right. You're recording that May 8th, right?
That's right.
Yeah, fuck you nerds. I'm going to go watch Real Men Box.
You know,
of course
we
you are.
Actually will have some trivia questions from Asimov and Philip K. Dick. I mean, we're going to be looking at questions from all access of media from sci-fi, film, television, animation, and yeah, you know what? Let's take a look at We Can Remember It for You wholesale.
I actually have a whole week dedicated to Philip K. Dick. If nothing else comes out around the week, I want to talk about that stuff. I found a comic book, I found a show, I found all kinds of stuff. So Philip K. Dick.
Sweet.
Yeah, because our last author, our last week's worth of author stuff worked out really, really well.
Which was that Alan Moore?
That would be Ed Brubaker, which which turned into Jesse having nightmares.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Wait, Mark, you said you found a comic book inspired by Philip K. Dick's work?
Yeah.
It's not just an adaptation of Blade Runner or Total Recall.
That's out there, but no.
Can you a link to this? I want to read this.
Yep, give me a second. Give me a sec here. Let me see if I can find it on the calendar, because it's already all on the calendar. Okay, so the source material I found was Philip K. Dick's The Hanging Stranger, which is the comic book. And then he apparently wrote The Man in the High Castle, of which the Amazon show was based on. So I want to do a TV party for that. And then, he was also responsible for Total Recall. So I have an on-trial civil court lined up comparing the 1990 Arnold Total Recall with the 2012 one.
Have fun with that.
All Philip K. Dick, all week long.
All Dick, all week.
All Dick, all week. So yeah, Jesse. By the way, I'm for all Dick all week. I'm eyeing you. So make sure.
Great. That's great. I'll make sure to keep my eye out for you too, sir.
So make sure while you're gearing up for all Dick all week that you watch Man in the High Castle.
All right then. Put it on the schedule for Dick Week.
You got it. I now may have to rename the week All Dick All Week.
Oh man. Oh.
Well, when the dick jokes start, the podcast stops. Good night, everybody.